Hey there, welcome to Unit 3, Lesson 10. Today we're going to start really talking about what Franklin Roosevelt did once he became president and put forth the New Deal and the efforts he took to try to fix us and fix the economy and get us out of the Great Depression. So we're going to go through some notes and then I'll talk to you about what you need to do for today's assignment. So we're going to start off with just the fact that in the 1932 election, as we've already mentioned in class, Franklin Roosevelt very easily beats Herbert Hoover in the election and puts forward his bold plan that he refers to as the New Deal in order to fix the nation's economy. He strongly believes that Hoover's hands-off approach was not the way to go and that the government needs to be more hands-on. So you can see here just how overwhelming he won. This is the electoral map from the 1932 election. All of these blue states are the states that Franklin Roosevelt won. These red states are the only ones that were actually won by Hoover. So you can see he has an overwhelming victory in the Electoral College. So when Franklin Roosevelt is elected to be president of the United States, he institutes what he calls the 3 R's. The first of those 3 R's is relief. Relief was intended to give immediate relief or help to businesses and people that were out of work. The second of the 3 R's was recovery. It's exactly what it sounds like. He said we needed to make sure that the economy could get back to where it was before. So these created temporary programs that were designed to bump up economic progress and help out businesses in the United States. And the third of these is reform. We want to make sure that this stuff isn't going to happen again. So this was the creation of permanent programs to prevent future depressions and ensure the citizens from a huge economic disaster again. So when he becomes president, Franklin Roosevelt puts down his foot and he's like, okay, in the first 100 days of my presidency, we're going to get this done and this done and this done. That is a big thing that presidents continually have done since him, that their first 100 days is supposed to be their big like kickoff, right? So even Joe Biden, when he was just recently elected to become president and took over the presidency, was like, okay, within my first 100 days, I want 150 million Americans vaccinated. So they always kind of set forth these bold plans to achieve in those first few months of their presidency. So when he becomes president, Franklin Roosevelt calls for a 100-day special session of Congress. What this means is that all members of Congress needed to come to the Capitol and needed to be there and be ready to get down to work, not be going back and forth between their homes or anything like that. Like, we were calling a special session of Congress. You need to be here. This problem is big. You need to help solve it. During this time, Congress actually enacted more legislation than any other Congress ever had before. He also, during his first 100 days, put forth a mandatory bank holiday. Now, holiday makes it sound like it was fun and exciting, but really what he did was he closed all the banks. Remember, we talked about how people were going to the banks and pulling all of their money out, and then the banks were failing, and then other people were getting scared that their bank would fail, so they'd go to their bank and pull all of their money out, and the same thing kept happening. So he was like, listen, we need to take a chill pill. So he closes the banks, says, listen, for 1 week, no banks will be open. Y'all need to kind of get your stuff together, figure it out. Everybody just needs to calm down for a minute and trust that we can get everything back up and running. He also pushed for the passing of the 21st Amendment. Now, the 18th Amendment that we remember back from 1919 took alcohol away and said no alcohol is allowed. The 21st Amendment is going to bring that back. And he wants to bring it back because, you guessed it, there's one big thing involved in alcohol, and that is money. If you bring alcohol back, people are drinking it anyway. You may as well make it legal and then tax it, and the United States can make some money off of it and then use that money to put it back into the economy to help stimulate the economy at the time. One thing that the president also did is, because of the access to radio that Americans had, and because he wanted to make those Americans feel more comfortable and at ease about what was going on, is we see him do what we call fireside chats. So these are going to be when the president sits down and kind of talks to the American people and says, here's what my plans are, here's what we're doing, and he's able to try to comfort the people. Presidents still do this today. In fact, the day that I am filming this, President Biden's supposed to be going on tonight to talk to the American people about the stimulus package that was being passed, about putting money in the pockets of people that are suffering because of the pandemic, and kind of explaining what he wants to do to make people feel more comforted that help is on the way. This is exactly what Franklin Roosevelt was doing, and it's what many presidents have continued to do since that time. So let's talk a little bit about the types of programs that were being created. We said that there were those 3 R's. The first of them were relief. So some examples of relief programs would be the Federal Emergency Relief Administration, which is going to grant funds to state relief agencies and provide unemployed with assistance. So remember, it's all about relieving the hurt that people and the struggle that people are going through at this time. The second one was the PWA, the Public Works Administration, which created jobs on government projects. So things to be able to like build bridges or put more electricity in areas where the government could say, this is necessary for us to have. We can spend the money on it. We can hire the people. Bada bing, bada boom. 2 birds, 1 stone, everybody's happy. So that's what the Public Works Administration did. And then the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps, provided jobs, especially for single males on conservation projects, like the creation of the Blue Ridge Parkway, which is a very famous road here in North Carolina that maybe you've traveled on at some point. Lastly, in this list, there's many, many more than this, by the way, but I'm just giving you like a couple prime examples. Lastly, we've got the Tennessee Valley Authority, or the TVA, which was going to provide economic relief to people hit in the Tennessee Valley area because it was such a very, very hard hit area of the country. Let's look at those recovery programs. So recovery was all about trying to pull the economy back up, not just relieving the people and giving jobs, but to help the economy stabilize. So the first is the Homeowners Loan Corporation, which refinanced mortgages to stop foreclosures, and the NRA, not the National Rifle Association that we think of for the NRA today, but the National Recovery Administration, which created that minimum wage and maximum working hours. It would later be at this point deemed unconstitutional, but eventually they're going to find a way to work around that and make sure that what is put into place is actually constitutional. Lastly, we got some reform programs. We want to make sure stuff like this never gets this bad again. So they created the FDIC, which is still in existence today. Remember, these are permanent programs. This is going to ensure your money that's in the bank. So because of this, now, if I have my money in Wells Fargo and Wells Fargo declares bankruptcy and they're going to close, the government ensures that my money will still be paid out to me up to a certain dollar amount. I think it's like $500,000 or something like that. But I mean, who's kidding? Who am I kidding? I'm a teacher. Like, I ain't got that kind of money sitting around in the bank anyway. So all of my money would be returned to me. This is still in place today to make sure that that would be there for the people. Next, we have the Securities and Exchange Commission, which again, as a permanent commission, is still around today. They're going to make sure that the stock market trading is being done correctly and that people aren't doing things like fraud and insider trading. And so here's the deal. You have to understand that these issues that we have today between Republicans and Democrats are not new issues. Even though he won in a landslide with the Electoral College, if we were to go back and look at the popular vote, it's still like close. It's still, in terms of elections, a landslide win for him. But there's still a lot of people who did not vote for Franklin Roosevelt. There's a lot of people who didn't think that the government getting involved was the way to handle it, just like there are people doing that today. With the economic stimulus package that's coming out right now because of the pandemic, not a single member of the Republican Party in the House of Representatives actually voted for it to be passed. There are still going to be tight party lines and people that are not always going to agree with the action that the government is going to take. And that's fine. There were just, you need to know, people that were going to be criticizing the president for the actions that he was taking. So he had some people saying he wasn't doing enough, some liberals, some Democrats saying, you're not doing enough, you're not doing it fast enough, we need to get in gear more. So they were criticizing him for that. You had conservatives, Republicans on the other side, who believed that there was too much government interference that was happening, that you were interfering way too much with our free market capitalist system, and that the government needed to back out because we are not a socialist or communist nation. And they were afraid that we were heading towards that way by the federal government getting more and more involved in these things. And then it came down to the Supreme Court. And this is where he really gets a lot of criticism. There were many programs that were being created by Roosevelt in which he had the courts declare the programs unconstitutional because they were too powerful and overreaching for what the government should be able to do. And so in order to try to combat that, he was like, listen, why don't we just have all of these like old people on the court anyway. They're not even in touch with the times. They're so old, they're practically going to die. We need to change up and get some new blood into the Supreme Court. So he concocts this plan where he's like, hey, anybody that's over a certain age, I think it was like 72 and a half or something like that, anybody that's over this age, because they're so close to dying and we can't trust that their mind is even in a good place, we should just add on an extra Supreme Court justice and basically like pack the courts. That was something that was like constantly that he was being constantly criticized for because it was a power reach. I mean, he was the president of the United States and he did like to have his power and wanted more of it. And so a lot of people thought that's really scary. He shouldn't be able to have that much influence over how many people are on the court and stuff. And it doesn't go through. It still stays to where we have 9 justices on the Supreme Court and no court packing plan is put into place. Which I forgot that this was a whole different slide. So let me go. This is exactly what I was just talking about. So he doesn't like the courts are not consistently ruling in his favor. He proposes that plan to have up to 6 new justices. So there we go. It's 70 and a half years. I knew it was something and a half, which I found odd. So anybody that was over 70 and a half years old, he wanted to be able to add another person through. As I said, it did not make it through Congress, and he was heavily criticized for trying to grab more power as the president. So that brings us to the end of these notes. What you're going to do for the rest of the period is, or not period, because if you're watching this, you probably weren't in the class period. So what you're going to be doing is completing your New Deal success paragraph. Now, here's the deal. Here's the deal for the New Deal. In class today, if you were there, then we went through and we read these documents that are linked here. And we created a Jamboard. I actually split you up into groups, and each group was responsible for looking at a different document. And then you had to post your answer on the Jamboard. And then we looked at it all together. And then you came back and you wrote this paragraph. Well, if you're watching this, you most likely missed all of that. And so because of that, you got to go through and read these documents on your own to be able to do this assignment, which is totally feasible and doable. It's what I used to always do. I just wanted today's lesson to actually like have a little bit more interaction. So what you're going to do is you're going to look at these documents. Some documents are going to favor the New Deal, and some documents are going to say that the New Deal wasn't good. What I would highly suggest you do is to create a T-chart. So signs of it being a success, signs of it being a failure. As you're reading the documents, go through and make a list of the things that you've got there, and then you are going to submit a paragraph. Your paragraph needs to be at least 5 sentences in length. It needs to have a clear stance. You have to pick a side. You cannot say the New Deal was both a success and a failure. Here's why. I want you to say the New Deal was a success because ... or the New Deal can be seen as a failure because ... You have to reference at least 2 of the documents that are back up here to support your claim. And your question that you're answering is this one that's right here at the top. Was the New Deal a success or a failure? You can either submit your paragraph by including it in the text box area below, or you can type it into a Google Doc and submit it that way. It's totally up to you how you want to do it. If you're absent from the Teams meeting, then as I said, you're going to be doing this on your own, which if you're watching this video, that probably includes you. With that being said, it brings us to the end of the lesson. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to reach out to me. You know how to get in touch with me, and I'm here to help. And I will see you guys next time. Bye, y'all.